It began in the Central Highlands, 1967, a place so dense with green that the air itself seemed alive. American troops called it the Green Hell. For the men of Bravo Company, 1st Cavalry Division, that phrase became more than slang. It became prophecy. Their mission sounded simple on paper. Move through the Ia Drang Valley and locate a suspected Viet Cong base hidden near the Cambodian border. What the orders didn't capture was the way the jungle would fight back. Helicopters dropped them into a clearing carved from the canopy, the blades shredding the humid air into a storm of red dust and shredded leaves. From above, it looked peaceful. From the ground, it felt like stepping into another planet, one that devoured sound, light, and sometimes men. The radio crackled briefly, then fell silent as the trees swallowed the signal. Within minutes, they were ghosts to their own command. Captain Robert Haynes led 32 men that morning. He was 28 on his second tour, a man who believed in preparation and discipline, two things Vietnam seemed to erase. The trail they followed had been cut by bare feet, lined with tripwires hidden under roots and moss. They moved slow, rifles up, eyes scanning the undergrowth that never stopped moving. In Vietnam, the enemy didn't announce himself. The jungle did, in whispers, in the distant click of insects going silent. The first burst came without warning. Automatic fire ripped through the column, snapping branches and tearing through ferns. 2 men went down before anyone saw where it came from. Haynes shouted orders, and the platoon dropped to the ground, returning fire toward the muzzle flashes they could barely see. For 15 minutes, it was chaos, smoke, mud, and the metallic taste of cordite in the air. When the firing finally stopped, 5 Americans were dead, and the enemy had vanished into the trees. They radioed for medevac, but the canopy was too thick. The wounded were carried on ponchos, their blood mixing with the monsoon rain that began falling just as the shooting ended. It was a slow, grinding retreat toward higher ground, where they could signal the choppers. Every few minutes, another burst of fire pinned them down. The jungle wasn't just a backdrop. It was an ambush that never ended by nightfall. Only 12 men remained uninjured. They set up a perimeter under the trees, listening to the rain pound the leaves above like distant artillery. Haynes wrote coordinates on a damp map, circled them twice, and whispered to his radio operator to keep trying the signal. Nothing came back but static. He looked at the faces around him, 19-year-olds from Ohio, Texas, and Montana, and said quietly, "We hold here till morning." But morning wouldn't come for all of them. The rain never stopped. It blurred the lines between exhaustion and fear, turning foxholes into puddles of red clay. Every few hours, a flare burned through the canopy, a ghostly white light that revealed nothing but mist and movement. The radio still whispered nothing but static, and the smell of cordite mixed with rotting vegetation hung in the air like a warning. Captain Haynes didn't sleep. He sat with his rifle across his knees, listening to the forest breathe at dawn. The fog came first, then the sound, faint rustling, then whispers in Vietnamese. Haynes raised his hand, signaling silence. The platoon tensed. The jungle erupted again. Automatic fire poured in from 3 sides. The men answered with M16s and M60s, their muzzle flashes turning the morning gray into strobing bursts of light. A grenade landed near the perimeter. The explosion lifted 2 men into the air. When the smoke cleared, half the platoon was gone. The rest crawled through the mud, dragging the wounded toward a fallen tree that served as cover. Haynes called in artillery coordinates, though he knew no one could hear them. He tried anyway, shouting into the radio until his voice cracked. Then he picked up his rifle again and went back to the line. By noon, the firing slowed. The Viet Cong melted back into the trees, leaving only echoes and the wounded behind. Haynes walked through what was left of his position. The jungle floor littered with helmets, spent casings, and silence. 11 men remained. They buried the dead in shallow graves beside a dry creek bed, marking each with a rifle and a name scratched into a ration tin. Haynes stood over the last one, his radio operator, Private Ellis, and made a promise. "I'll bring them home," he said softly. "All of them." The men didn't speak. They just nodded and shouldered their rifles, knowing it was a promise made in a place where few survived long enough to keep one. For the next 3 days, they moved without contact, living off rainwater and what little food remained. The jungle took on a rhythm, hours of silence broken by bursts of panic whenever the trees moved wrong. When the extraction finally came, a single Huey found a gap in the canopy wide enough for one descent. The men climbed aboard one by one, each carrying more than their gear. As the helicopter lifted off, Haynes looked down at the clearing disappearing beneath the rotors. Somewhere below were the graves, hidden by vines already reclaiming the ground. When he returned to base, Haynes turned in his rifle and maps, then requested another patrol to recover the bodies. Command denied it. The area was now under enemy control. He didn't argue. He just walked out into the rain, knowing the jungle would keep its dead. Years later, long after the war ended, veterans returned to that valley. Among them was Robert Haynes, older, slower, but carrying the same map he'd circled in the rain. The jungle had changed, thicker, quieter, but when he reached that dry creek bed, he stopped. The rifles were gone. The ground was peaceful. He stood there for a long time, hand on the soil, and whispered what he'd promised. "You're home now."